One of the subjects we keep dealing with just over and over and over again is the subject of the spiritual on the one hand and the physical on the other hand. And the reason we keep dealing with that over and over again is because it's constant in the scriptures. Just about every scripture you go to somehow has that emphasis within its context. The idea of the spiritual over against the idea of the physical. And of course, we know the spiritual is the unseen world. That there's a whole world out there that you cannot see. There's a world that is, and it's unseen. You can't measure it. You can't dissect it. You can't, there's a mystery about it. There's a lot that we don't know about it, which doesn't mean we don't know something. It's just it just means we don't know everything. And we understand that in that spiritual world, there is a war that is taking place. The Bible describes it for us in Ephesians. It is a war that is between principalities and powers and the rulers of darkness and that which is good and right and God himself. We talked about it in our class, actually, Friday night. The whole idea that the devil is not out to get you. He's not out against you. The battle is not between you and the devil. The battle is between the devil and God. You just become the platform upon which it acts. So there's this whole unseen world out there that is literally affecting your life. It is literally pressing you moment by moment. And while you may not acknowledge it, you may not be aware of it, you might act like it's not there, it is definitely influencing attitude. It's displaying itself in your physical life. It's in your relationships, the spiritual unseen world. What a reality. There is also the physical world. We're much aware of that. We deal with that all the time. No way out of that. The Bible makes no effort to demean, belittle, make it small, doesn't matter, don't worry about it, that kind of thing. It's like it isn't there. The Bible acknowledges it, knows it's a big deal, and it appears that the setup is that the spiritual world is literally manifest itself and act itself out in your physical existence. So the spiritual becomes known in your physical world. And both of them are absolutely vital to the human life. There's a lot of mystery about all of that. The interaction of those two, the interlocking of them, how they link together, how it plays out. A lot of mystery. Stuff we don't know. Stuff I don't know. I've had some questions about this spiritual world. God is spirit, you understand. The whole spiritual world is his. No question about that. Jesus was talking to a woman at the well. And she was arguing about, well, you guys say we have to worship in Jerusalem. We worship over at this mountain. So which is right? And she wanted to do a theological argument. Jesus said, hey, not interested in that kind of theological argument. Because the truth of it is, God is spirit, spiritual world. God is not physical. God is spiritual. God is spirit. And those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. So what we're dealing with is a God who does not have a body, a God who does not have limits, a God who does not exist in space, a God who is real, personality, has a mind, a will, an emotion. You were made in his image, you have those. Mind, will, and emotion, and yet has no limitation of body, physical existence. The proof of that is one of the attributes of God is omnipresent. Well, how could you be omnipresent and be limited by space? How could you be omnipresent and be limited by a body? Well, you could not. So God exists in this spiritual world that has no limits of the physical. God is eternal. You understand that the eternalness is a step beyond the time zone, and that the time zone is literally limited to the physical existence. We have a past, we have a present, we have a future. What's that all about? It's all about a physical existence. But God doesn't live in the physical existence. He lives in the spiritual realities. Therefore, he is eternal, I know it's a mystery. He has no beginning. He has no end. Why? Because there is no time element. He lives beyond the ticking of a clock. That does not limit him. See, God is a spirit. God is spiritual. He dwells in the spiritual world. Which presents an amazing question. Why would a spiritual God create a physical world? The answer is, I have no idea. Isn't that a mystery? And you could say, well, he wants sons and he wants daughters. Okay. He wanted man in his image. Okay. But he could have made us just spirits. But he didn't. He created an entire physical world and made us physical. Evidently, there's something inside of God that just drove him to this. Evidently, there's something inside of God that just burns in his bones. It's a love in his system. It's a heartbeat that says, oh, and he just physical. He delights in the physical. He delights in physical stuff. Mystery. And if you say, well, can you prove that? Well, absolutely. You memorized it. Come on. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, the physical. He loved the physical. God loved the physical world. That everything he made came out of this roaring, aggressive, passionate love that is at the heart of the universe. And that the whole physical world spilled out of the delight and the pleasure of God himself. Phenomenal. Because God is spiritual, dwells in a spiritual world, a spirit world, and yet he had a desire and a delight for the physical existence of the physical world. And he made an entire physical world. Wow. And if you say, well, how much did God love? How much does God love the physical world? That's easy. You memorized it. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. God became physical. Wrap your brain around that. Philosopher, go over and sit on a park bench and think about that for 20 years. God, a spiritual being, entered into the physical realm with the limitation of a body, with the limitation of time, past, present, future, had birthdays. And if you say, well, that's a mystery, why would he do that? Again, it was motivated by, for God so loved the world that he sent. So this aggressive, the same aggressive love that created the physical world is the same aggressive love that caused him to join us in our physical state. And ladies and gentlemen, you cannot find that any place, anywhere under the sun. Read any book you want to read, go to any religion you want to go to, think any thoughts you want to think, and you'll never come up with that one. That is uniquely the wonder of Jesus himself. Wow. A spiritual God joined us in the physical. Why would he do that? You memorized it. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish. It was a redemptive thing. God, in this passionate love for his world, for his physical world, including the physical existence of humanity, could not stand back and allow it to go the way it was going. Had to intervene. Why didn't he just do it in the spiritual realm? Isn't it just a spiritual problem? No, it is a physical problem as well. That's the linkage. That's the mystery of the linkage between the two. That something that's going on inside of you and inside of me is some kind of overwhelming togetherness of my spiritual life and my physical life. And it's difficult to separate them. And yet you see them distinct, and yet you cannot divide them up because they are so interlocked together. It's amazing. The Bible is very definite on the fact that without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. Sin cannot be dealt with without the shedding of blood. We make a big deal out of the blood of Jesus. But guys, it isn't the blood. Oh, it is the blood, but it's not the blood. It's the life. For life is in the blood. That was the concept. So every lamb that was slaughtered was the taking of a life, which was symbolic of the life that would be taken. But you see, God has a problem because only God can redeem a physical world. And yet he can't, because he cannot die, because he is not physical. He is eternal. He doesn't dwell in the time zone. So God, are you getting it? Joined us in the physical realm. Took on time and could die. And interestingly enough, when he died, the whole spiritual realm was shaken at its core, and the whole physical realm was disturbed in its essence. Earthquakes took place. Graves were opened. Veil was ripped from top to bottom. Sun turned dark at noon. Wow. Isn't it amazing? Jesus says, let's talk about communication with God. Let's talk about you giving your life to Christ and Christ giving his life to you, and the two of you coming together in such intimacy that you begin to think as one, operate as one, act as one. Let's talk about a communication that takes place there. He calls it the secret place. It's the place where it's not 9 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. It's not a prayer schedule. It's not, well, I pray before my meals. Well, I pray 15 minutes every time I get up in the morning. See, it's not that. That's not bad, but that's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about is this interlocking. He's talking about the spiritual realm of the presence of God literally joining you in your physical existence, and the two of you literally coming together in some kind of merger until you and him begin to act as one, think as one, will as one, and it's that interlocking. That's the secret place. You are to live there. You don't visit that place. That's who you are. It's not a room. It's not a closet. It's not an inner room. He's not talking about that. That's imagery for this thing. That deep within the physical existence of your life, there's this intertwining of who you are and who he is in such a merger that you can live in the constant communication with God. And isn't it interesting, as he discusses that constant communication with God, right in the middle of his prayer, he brings up, give us our daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread. Physical. So we're not just talking about some kind of woo-woo. We're not just talking about, oh, God, let your blessings fall. We're not just talking about, oh, help me to feel good. We're not talking about just emotional. We're not talking about just heaven when I get there. What we're talking about is, hey, what I'm going to eat on my table, son. Which is as practical as it gets. So evidently, he thinks, Jesus is proposing, that this merger between you and him, this who you are and who he is, your helplessness and who he is, coming together, literally affects the physical existence of your life. In fact, he begins to develop that in the rest of the chapters. He moves into verse 16, for instance. Look at it. And says, oh, let me talk to you about spiritual discipline. Oh, you mean I'm going to discipline my mind? Okay. I'm going to discipline my emotions? That would be good. I'm going to discipline. Yeah, that would be fine. But he's not talking about that. He's talking about fasting, which is all about eating or not eating. That's so physical. That somehow the spiritual becomes so valuable in my life that it overrides my eating? That's weird. Because I can hardly get out of here and go to dinner. Wait to get out of here and go to dinner? Wow. What kind of interlocking is that? And why is that so important? That my spiritual life would override my physical existence. Why would the practical, physical things of my living experience be secondary to the spiritual realities of my life? Because you see, the spiritual realities of my life are going to play themselves out in the physical, and the physical was meant to come under the domination of the spiritual, not the other way around. See, the physical is not to take over the spiritual and dictate to the spiritual. The spiritual is to dictate to the physical. That was Jesus. That's the Garden of Gethsemane. Do you see him? Agonizing. Why? Because there's this cross thing. There's this trial. There's this scourging. There's this bleeding back. There's this crown of thorns. There's all of this physical, awful suffering. And how does the physical respond to that? No. 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 I don't want to embrace that. And yet the spiritual says, Father, your will, whatever it is. Well, son, what if my will is the cross? What if my will is the suffering? No! So Jesus, what are you going to do? Are you going to allow your physical to override the spiritual? Or are you going to bring the physical under the control of your spiritual life and follow through to the destiny of God for your living? Which, ladies and gentlemen, is the proposition for every single one of us. Well, I'm not facing a cross. Okay. But am I going to bring my physical life under the control of my spiritual and allow my spiritual to dominate and dictate and display and act itself upon my physical life? Or if I'm going to let my body drives and my physical existence literally dictate my comfort, my materialism literally dictate to my spiritual life? That's the issue of the intimacy. Why is that so important? Well, in the rest of the chapter, again, go to verse 19. After he gets done with the fasting, he says, oh, let me talk to you about treasure. Treasure? Yeah. What's a treasure? Oh, that's the thing I crave. That's the thing I cater to. That's the thing I cluster. That's the thing I grab a hold of. That's the thing I hide. That's the thing I don't want anybody to get. That's the thing I protect. I put it behind locked doors. Why? It has value. Because where my treasure is, there my heart is also. So he says, hey, man, if you're going to lay up treasures on earth, physical, where moth and rust corrupts and thieves break in and steal, don't do that. Don't focus on physical. Don't lay up treasures on earth. And he's not talking about, well, I don't have any money, Manley, so that doesn't apply to me. He's not talking about that. He's talking about what you want, what you go after, what you focus on, what you wear yourself out, what you work yourself into a heart attack over. He's talking about that. Is it materialism? Is it things? Is it body drives? What's mastering your life? That's the treasure, he says. Don't focus on the physical as your treasure. Focus on heaven. Now, heaven isn't a place. He's talking about the spiritual. So focus on the spiritual things where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves can't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart is also. So what's he saying? Here's the physical. Is it going to dominate in my life and dictate to my spiritual? Is my emotions, my mind, my attitudes all going to be dictated to by my physical circumstances and my physical existence? Are my body drives going to dictate to my inner spirit? Or is my spiritual life going to reach out and grab hold of the physical and bring it under its domination so that the spiritual dynamic, it acts itself out in the spirit, in the physical existence of my living? In fact, he says, let me add to that, verse 22 of this same chapter, the lamp is the body. The lamp of the body is the eye. What's he talking about? Focus. He's talking about perspective. What is the perspective of my life? Oh, it's determined by the treasure. So if my whole focus is on the physical, my physical comfort, my physical, well, I have this, I need that, I want that, if that's the whole focus of my life, what happens? That's the treasure. That becomes the focus of my eye. That becomes the one thing. If the spiritual dominates, physical is not bad, spiritual is not bad, that's not the issue. It's the interlocking, the interplay between them. In fact, he ends up by saying, verse 24, no one can serve two masters. Wow. And logically, he lays it out. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or else you will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. What's mammon? Physical. Physical. You cannot have two masters. Well, what am I supposed to do then, Manley? He says, don't worry. Verse 25. Don't worry about the physical. It's there. Yeah. Got to have it. Right. It's okay. No problem. We have body drives. I know. I get hungry. You're right. I need sleep. You're exactly right. Nothing wrong with any of that. But he says, don't. The birds, you think they sweat over it? Nah. The lilies, you think? No. What happens? The Father. Don't you know the Father? The spiritual. Don't you understand the Father? The Father knows what you need before you ask him. Come on. Come on. And if this could be your focus, if you get it, and that could play itself out on this. Wow. So what should be? Oh, it's easy. Seek. That's verse 33. Seek first this. Go after intimacy with him. Let the absolute major concern of your life be, how well do I know him? Let the primary, absolute focus of your life be, well, what about all this? No problem. No problem. No problem. Well, what if I don't go after him? What if I go after that? Problems. Because there's never enough. I'm always scraping. Can't quite make it. It's never sufficient. Wow. So isn't it interesting, folks, that right in the middle of this prayer called the Lord's Prayer, right in the middle, he puts, give us this day our daily bread. Now, I want to give you three things. Probably won't. I always say that. There are three things, but I probably won't give them to you. One is context. See, you've got to see this thing in its context. See, the context. Give us this day our daily bread. What's the context of that? Well, what's the just immediate preceding statement? Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, he uses this heaven statement. I want you to get this. He uses this heaven statement there. He uses it in the previous verse, our Father in heaven. Not a location. See, get out of the physical. Think in terms of the spiritual. Oh, God lives in heaven. Well, what kind of a house does he have? 17 bathrooms. Come on. He's spirit. He doesn't need a bathroom. He doesn't have a throne. It's not gold-plated. See, get out of that. So heaven is, if God is omnipresent, if God dwells in the spiritual realm, if God is spirit and it's not limited by space or body or physical, then he's omnipresent, so he's everywhere. So everywhere is heaven. Because it's not talking about a location. What's his address? No address. It's talking about he's transcended. It's talking about the spiritual. The Father who is in the spiritual realm, he says. So what is your prayer? Give me my daily bread. What's the context of that? I want your will to be done in my daily bread physical existence as it is done in your spiritual existence. That's the prayer. So however your will is accomplished in the spiritual realm, that's the way I want it accomplished in my physical earth realm, in my daily bread. But you say, Manley, I'm not in heaven. We're not talking about location. We're talking about spirit, spiritual. But I live in the physical realm. I know. Let me read you a passage. This is Paul's idea. This is a mystery. Think about this. He says in Romans chapter 8, don't need to turn there, I'll just read it to you. Listen to this. He says, because the creation itself, the whole physical world, will be delivered. Well, Jesus died for me. I know. He's going to forgive me of my sins. That's right. He's coming the second time. Amen. He's going to take me out of this mess. Amen. And I'm going to have a new body. That's right. Which means I live right now in a cursed body. It means my body is not right. But then it's not just my body. It's all creation. The mosquitoes are not right either. Cockroaches aren't the way they're supposed to be. Bed bugs are not the kind of thing they ought to be. Well, what happened to them? Sin. That's a biblical concept, you know. That when Adam and Eve fell, it didn't just affect them, it affected the whole creation. And listen to what Paul said, because the creation itself will also be delivered from the bondage of corruption. That the whole creation is under the bondage of corruption unto the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know, listen to this, for we know that the whole creation groans in the silence of the night. Go out in the yard and listen to the creation groaning and labor. It groans and labors with birth pains. Meaning what? It's trying to get out of the womb of this corruption. That the whole creation around us. Whoa. The fish in the sea. My dog. Oh, no, not my dog. He's under the domination of the curse of sin. That creates a dilemma. Because he says, I'm to pray for my physical wife. I'm to pray for the physical world of my existence. I'm to pray that my physical activities and life that your will be done in that physical existence of my life like it's done in the spiritual world. How is that going to happen? See, the spiritual world doesn't know the corruption of sin. The spiritual world doesn't know the curse of sin. The spiritual world is in perfection. The spiritual world knows nothing but victory. I live in a world that's filthy. I live in a world that's cursed. I live in a body that wants what it shouldn't have. And you want me to live like this? Here? Good luck on that. Did you get that? See, the prayer is that my physical life, right now, in the midst of the curse of sin, and a body that wants stuff it shouldn't have, and in a body that has drives that are out of control, and in a mind that doesn't operate the way it ought to, and in a mind that thinks things it shouldn't think, and in emotions that rage when they shouldn't rage, and I've got, man, what's wrong with me? I'm under the curse of sin. And the prayer is what? That His will that's done in the spiritual realm, which is a realm of perfection, which is a realm that knows no sin, which is a realm that has no corruption, that His will that's done there, as it's done there, it will be done here. How am I going to pull that off? And if I could pull it off, what would it look like? Oh, that's Jesus. Jesus pulled that off. And that's what this was about. Father, I am not going to let my physical world dictate my spiritual relationship with you. I'm not going to let my comfort, I'm not going to let the ease, I'm not going to let my body drives, I'm not going to let the cravings of my system that would run away from a cross and run away from your will and run away from and would pamper itself and baby itself. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to bring my physical life under the domination of your spiritual world. And I'm not going to allow the physical world to dominate my spirit. I'm going to let the spiritual, my intimacy with you, the merger, I'm going to bring my whole physical being under the domination of the merger I have with you. And I want you to play out your spiritual mind, your heart, your will, what you want, what you desire. I want you to play that out in my physical existence. And every time that happens in a cursed world, this is produced. A cross is produced. There's always a Philippi jail. Manley, I came this morning for a little encouragement. We're at war. And if you're going to be in the middle of this, get ready for a battle. Because my body's going to fight me teeth and toenail on this. It's going to kick and scream, and I'm going to have to, let me read you what Paul said. He said, I now rejoice in my sufferings for you and fill up in my flesh what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ for the sake of the body, which is the church. You didn't get that. Let me read it again. I rejoice in my sufferings for you and fill up in my flesh what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ. I have brought my body under the domination of the call of God in my life, the spiritual realm, and that has produced sufferings for you. Let me read you something else he said. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your physical body. Don't let it rule in your physical body, that you should obey its lust. Do not present your members, the members of your body, my hands, my feet, my head, my body parts. Do not present your members as instruments of unrighteousness of sin, but present yourselves to God as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness. You're not going to tell me what to do anymore. I'm going to live in such intimacy with Jesus that the power and the strength of Jesus in the spiritual realm that knows no sin is going to be done right here in my physical world, which will produce conflict, screaming and yelling and beating of backs, and nails in hands and crosses will be produced. But hey, I'm going to bring my whole physical life under the domination of the spiritual. How can I live that way? Prayer. 9 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon? No. 15 minutes in the morning, right? That'll do it. No. Now I lay me down to sleep, pray the Lord. No. Pray before my meals. No. Prayer that is a merger. Prayer that is a constant communication with Him. Prayer that is the atmosphere of you and Him literally embracing each other. And His mind and His will play out in your physical life. Can I master my physical life? Never have. But I want the second piece of pie. Never have turned it down. I can't turn the first one down. Oh, what chance do I have? I got to have Him. This has got to be my treasure. I got to go here. I got to be full of Him. I've got to admit my helplessness and embrace Him and have Him embrace me. And in that embrace, He begins to affect my body, my physical. Wow. So number one, context. Number two, content. Number three, current. But you'll have to figure those out on your own. Lord, we love You. Man, we love You. And God, I want to go on record before this congregation, my people. I want to go on record. I'm sick to death of my body telling me what to do. I'm sick to death of my drives demanding. And I seem to have no choice. Was Paul right on when he said, present your bodies a living sacrifice? That I could crawl up on an altar of prayer and literally offer myself to You, only my body wouldn't die. It wouldn't be the slaughter of a lamb. I would be a living sacrifice. My physical life would be a living sacrifice of intimacy to You, so that You could fill me, flow within me, and demonstrate Yourself in my physical existence. I repent, oh God, for every time my physical has been the focus, and the spiritual was pushed aside. I repent for every time I've been in a Garden of Gethsemane, and what you wanted, I dumped. For the sake of physical security, acceptance. And I never experienced the crucifixion, and I didn't experience the resurrection. And I didn't get to sit at your right hand. Because my body ruled. And so today I come saying, I give you this body. I give you my physical existence. I give you my materialism. I give you my bank account. I give you my money in my pocket. I give you my job. I give you all the physical interactions of my life, that somehow merging with you might spill into all of that interaction, and you might be seen in my physical world with such a marvelous demonstration that people would want what I have. Heads are bowed. Altars open. Would you commit with me? Would you join me in commitment to Jesus? That would say, my focus is going to be on you. You will be my treasure. And I'm going to bend my flesh, my physical existence, under the domination of that intimacy with you. Full aware that I don't have the strength to pull that off, and I can't get that done, and I can make a commitment like that and not keep it. But Jesus, we're making that commitment today, well aware that you're our Father, and you know what we need before we even ask, and that you're the God who loved the physical so much you joined us. Would you join us again in our physical structure? Would you invade our flesh today? So our altar's open. Want to join me?